Welcome to Michael's Record Collection, where we talk about great music with the people who make it and the people who love it. I am joined today, very honored to be joined by Phil Keaggy. You may know him from Glass Harp. You may know him from his Christian contemporary albums. You may know him from a brand new outfit called Cosmic Cathedral. Cosmic Cathedral's debut album coming out April 25th on Inside Out Music. It's called Deep Water. I've been enjoying it. Phil, thank you so much for your time.
Michael, nice to be with you. Nice to be with
Great,
you. Nice to say
great to
hello to
be with
everybody
you.
else. Yeah.
I want to ask you. I imagine I kind of know the answer to this, but I like to start out by asking all of my guests, what was your first favorite record? What album did you hear at a young age that really spoke to you for the first time?
Um, Very clear memory. Uh, Before I could even read, my mom used to tell me, because my brother, I'm one of 10 kids. I'm the ninth of 10 kids. I have five brothers, four sisters. And brother Dave was the music collector. And Mike did too, but brother Dave especially, because he loved all kinds of music. First of all, he loved classical music, but then he loved the rockabilly stuff. And the first record I heard was "Too Much" by Elvis Presley, and it's up on a little RCA Victor, which I have, like a 1951 RCA Victor 45 changer. And there was, you know, that song that starts with sing. Anyway, I'm in the wrong key. Anyway, and I do remember hearing that. Hearing "My Baby Left Me" made a huge impression on me. Scotty Moore's guitar, and just Elvis's voice, the '50s voice. But the first time I asked my mom to buy me a record was Eddie Cochran's song called "Sitting in the Balcony," and I bet you a lot of people don't know of that unless you're an Eddie Cochran fan. He also, came up with "Summertime Blues," and
Mm-hmm.
but I also asked her to buy me another record on Mercury Records called "Little Darlin'" by the Diamonds. And so I just love that song. It just kind of grabbed me. And from that point on, I remember just collecting 45s since I was in the first grade. EPs and hit records. Our bus driver that drove us to school played the AM radio, and he was also a disc jockey. And he would give me some of his radio station copies, and I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I was always encouraged, and eventually my mom and my dad encouraged me in my music. My brother Dave, who I mentioned, bought me my first electric guitar when I was in the fifth grade. Uh, my dad bought me my first acoustic guitar when I was in the fourth grade, and so that was where I launched out, so to speak.
Right.
My first album that I recall having and holding in my hands that was my album was Elvis's King Creole I got for Christmas
Oh wow.
in the second or third grade.
Okay. That's not one of his probably most famous ones, I guess, but
Oh, it had that Dixieland,
yeah.
jazz band thing going on, that Dixieland um, blues. Uh, and for a kid, that was exciting for me.
Hmm.
And I still have that album. But my very favorite Elvis album was Elvis Golden Records, Volume One. But then when the Beatles came out, and in between, I loved the Everly Brothers. I loved songs like that and or harmonies and everything. But the Beatles, Meet the Beatles, and Beatles' second album, those singles that came out before, back in the day when Capitol was refusing to sign the Beatles on until EMI said, "No, you must do it." Then they had the number one hit with "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Um, First time I ever heard "I Want to Hold Your Hand," I was at my grandmother's house looking at her little Tiffany lamp and have a radio right there. And when I heard that sound, the sound of those guitars, the sound of those voices, I go, well, that's new. That's completely new. And then, of course, I watched when they were on the Ed Sullivan Show on February 9th, 64. And me, along with about a million guitar players, started bands. So
Yeah.
I got into a band when I was, just a kid.
Yeah, you mentioned you came from a big family. Now, I read a story. Did you originally want a drum set rather than a guitar?
Yeah, that's right, Michael. I did. Because I was listening to Sandy Nelson and Cozy Cole. I'm just a kid, just third, fourth grade, listening to drummers like Sandy Nelson and Cozy Cole. I love the Ventures, which was, which really drew me to instrumental music. And so, but yeah, I thought I asked my mom and dad for a drum set when I was a 4th grader, something like that. And my dad brought home a Silvertone acoustic because his dad played an old Martin. He says,
Mm,
"No, I think it'll be nicer and quieter around the house if you play guitar." And of
yeah.
course, I couldn't get my hand around the neck of the guitar. So I played it on my lap like this, and my first song was playing it with my thumb. And then I learned third man theme, playing it, with my thumb.
Yeah.
And, and that's I don't, I've got a really good long-term memory. I can see where I was sitting when I was playing it, using a toothpick for a guitar pick. Um, And then finally, I discovered picks. And then many, many years down the road, I discovered, oh, my nails could do the same thing. So I play a lot with just my nails.
Yeah, yeah, it's very creative. Yeah, I recently had on Mike Holmes, the guitarist from IQ. I don't know if you're familiar with that band, but he also wanted originally to be a drummer and was given a guitar
Oh,
instead. So I guess that's the thing that parents do with it. Like, well, this won't be quite as noisy, but
oh, yeah, I think so. I think so. Unless you've got a big house or an underground, you know, room or something that's soundproofed. Um, I've got a little studio in my basement of my house, and it's triple attenuated. You can have a band rocking out down here, and people could sleep upstairs. So I think that's pretty nice.
that is nice. That
I have
is
a drum
nice.
set as well, and uh, done a lot of recording here in 35 years. A lot of music came out of this room.
Yeah. So you mentioned you come from a big family. You had some people that were into music in your family, and you eventually got into guitar. And a lot of people may not realize who have heard your albums, but maybe don't know that much about you. They may not realize that you have you had an injury as a child that took part of your finger.
Uh-huh. There it is. Yeah, and
Now,
I wasn't trying to be like Jerry Garcia either. I didn't even know who it was at the time. And I didn't chop it off so I could play better. No, it was a water pump on the farm, the kind that you crank with the big handle, and
hmm
so I was doing this, cranking with my left hand and left arm, and the thing just collapsed right through the shaft, whatever that, and the faucet, which was heavy iron or something, heavy metal, came down on my hand, and it's like I can remember it as if it were a week ago. I can remember it, seeing it dangling there, and they tried to sew it back on, but it wouldn't take, and it was really hard, my mom and dad, especially the fact that 2 years earlier, our oldest brother got killed in a car accident. And then 2 weeks after I lost my finger, my little sister lost her big toe on a
Oh my
bike
goodness!
truck. And
Wow.
so she lost her big toe. I lost my finger. I had a cast on my hand at the very time this happened to her, because my dad had a quarter-mile racing track, like for motorcycles and midget cars
Mm.
on the farm we lived. And you know, my sister took my little sister on a bike ride, but my little sister didn't have shoes and socks on, and she was sitting on the back fender. But it didn't slow her down. She did really good through her life, and I thank God I feel blessed. I've done very well in my life too, with 9 fingers. I
Yeah.
can't play
What was
bingo
that
much.
like for you? Was it like compensating with the guitar playing?
Um, I didn't give it a lot of thought. I think what I had to overcome the most was not the technical, because I wasn't aware of how untechnical I was. I was aware of being noticed. When you're a kid and you're missing
Yeah.
where kids look, And when I first started playing in public, I remember feeling uh, this redness, my I felt slightly embarrassed. But then that really changed as I developed into my teenage years and learned more guitar and got a little bit more confidence and yeah, it's just what it is. I'm just grateful that God gives us 10 to begin with.
Yeah. But it was good. Yeah, of course you're self-conscious when you're a child, but you were
Hmm.
very early on, as you mentioned, you were already in bands. You joined the Squires at what, 13 years old?
It was the summer of 1965. I would have been 14.
Mm.
Hmm. And the other three guys in the band, they lost their lead guitar player. And I had just moved back from California because we'd go back and forth from Ohio to California because my dad was an iron worker. He built bridges and high structures, and he was an iron worker, connector, they call him. And he loved the winters out in California, so we were out there. But then my mom's mom, our grandmother, was still alive. So we had to come back to Ohio, of course, and not permanently stay in California. So when we got back in Ohio, uh, uh, I went to this music store, Ducey Music in Youngstown, Ohio, met a man named Del Sinchak, who was so incredible and so encouraging to me as a young player. He'd let me play any guitar in the store and just smile. And then he connected me with the guys in the Squires, and they were like 11th and 12th graders in high school, and here I was an eighth grader. And this young fella, and I joined him, and we made a record um, in '66 called Batmobile, and made a 45 RPM. And those guys are still friends today. I keep in touch with them, and
Oh,
uh, especially Bob Flemish, the bass player, who my mom and dad said to Bob, "Now you take care of our Petey. He's just a kid." And I was playing bars. Here I am, a funny story here. I'm in eighth grade, and I get selected to be the guitar player for the Sound of Music play at our little Catholic school in eighth grade. And I'm going to play the electric, my Mose right at the time, into my Bandmaster amplifier. And then so after the rehearsal, so all you children will be here tonight to rehearse, and everybody's going, "Yes, sister," Sister Mary Charles. Uh, and she said, "That's right, right, Philip?" And I go, "No, I'm sorry, I can't be here." So why on earth can't you be here? I go, "I've got to play at the Penguins Roost." With the Squires, the Penguins Roost, which was a nightclub.
yeah.
Here I am in eighth grade, but I did real good on the play. I knew my bit. It was Edelweiss, if you recall that
Oh,
song,
yeah.
Edelweiss. Um, but it was that same sister, that same nun, who introduced me to John Safara, who eventually John and I started the Glass Harp in 1968, the summer of '68.
Yeah. So I think I misspoke. I think you went from the Ketones to the Squires. Ketones was before the Squires.
Yeah, the Ketones, that was a California little band, and we were good. It was Sam Crumweed, Donald Graham, and myself, just three-piece. And uh, we were learning the pop songs of the time, Zombies, we were Everly Brothers, Rolling Stones, Beatles, just covers. And we were, I guess, pretty good for kids. We were just kids, seventh graders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went from that. We changed our name to the Vertices. I remember we had our own little band cards made up, and they were pretty impressive. And then we came back to Ohio, and I joined the Squires.
So Ketones to Squires. You went eventually to Glass Harp. Glass Harp, is that still going on today?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I left the group. I was there from '68 to '72, and we did three studio albums and a live album at Carnegie Hall in November '71, which is my favorite. Glass Harp album. It shows everybody, and it's going to be out as an LP soon.
Oh, nice.
And
Nice.
we opened up for the Kinks that night, and the place was completely packed. Carnegie Hall was packed, and they had the Electric Lady mobile studio unit there, and it was an amazing, electrifying night. Have you ever heard it?
No, no.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And um, but that was with Daniel Pecchio on bass and vocals too. And Daniel joined us after we'd been together for a year. We had a couple different bass players, Steve Marklin and John Carozino. And I like to, tip of the hat to those guys because they helped in the beginning days.
Yeah. The reason I asked if it was still going ongoing, I figured it wasn't, but there was I think it was Wikipedia that said is. They usually say was a band, but it said is on the page, so I wanted to just double check that. So
I,
that's
I I think those who loved Glass Harp, they still live on in their memory, in
mm,
my memory too. I mean, some wonderful, wonderful moments and experiences being on the road with Daniel and John, traveling the country. We never went out of the country to play, but we played throughout the U.S. and especially the West Coast, and then throughout the Midwest and East Coast. I think. Uh, but that's how I learned how to jam. That's how I learned how to be exploratory with my
mhm.
guitar playing. And as a youngster at the age of 18, 19, 20, I developed a lot of, I think, skill because I was so dedicated. And I loved all kinds of music. So I was a sponge. I just absorbed everything I listened to and loved it. Also at this time, I became a believer in Jesus, and I turned my heart over to him, my life over to him. And I just said, Lord, you just lead me, and I will follow you. And that really also, an incredible thing that happened was at the age of 18 when we did our first demo album, Glass Harp. Um, and then a year later, we did our first studio Decca record, the Glass Harp first album. I
Mhm.
mean, there is a great deal of change in the way I played from one year to the next, and I think the Lord had everything to do with that. Just by giving me peace of mind and helping me to be more melodic and want to say something with my guitar playing and not just do riffs.
Mm.
Because that's where I learned how to do a lot of fast riffs that didn't make a lot of sense, and it's actually comical to listen to it today. I laugh when I listen to those demos that we did, and they're all on my Bandcamp, so everything's out
Oh,
there.
nice.
Yeah. So,
So let's move forward then. You were with
mhm.
Glass Harp for a while. I found your music through Neal Morse and specifically through your work on One with Neal.
Uh-huh.
With you sang obviously on Cradle to the Grave. You contributed some guitar, and I also heard because I was in Neal's inner circle, so I was a subscriber to that, and I heard these wonderful duets that you guys did together. George Harrison's "What Is Life" was one of those,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I what really struck me about that was the harmonizing that you two do so well together, and that is very prominent in the new Cosmic Cathedral album. So
Mm.
that was one of those things where that's how I became aware of you. That's one of the things that I was most excited about when I had Neal on my show, and he kind of let the cat out of the bag that he was going to do something with you and Chester. But it didn't have a name yet, and all of that when I talked to him about that. But
Uh,
so, how did you meet Neal for the first time?
it's hard to remember exactly how it happened, how it came about. We may have met at either a NAMM show or something, um, or he contacted me, and he and his engineer came to my home here, and I did my guitar and my vocal parts for the one album. And I remember doing this solo on, I think it's called Creation or New Creation.
Yeah,
Is that the
creation. Mm-hmm.
creation? And so I contacted Neal and I did some singing with him and for him. And I said, "Hey, would you send me a copy of the album so I could hear it? I'd love to hear it." And so I'm looking for my solo. And then I realized the song is 18 minutes long. My solo is like 40 minutes, 40 seconds long. And so, and that's how I got to understand the mind of Neal Morse just a little bit. He is a prog rock um, uh, icon. He's just amazing. He's really a musical genius in my opinion.
Hmm.
And so I think we did a couple live things, along the way back in the 2006, 7, somewhere around there. And then he contacted me after he had met up with Chester Thompson, uh, and he went to Chester's to jam and stuff, and then Chester, I think, recommended me, or he recommended Byron House to play bass. Oh, and Neal thought of me, and so we got together a year ago, past January, in 2024. And we just spent a few hours just jamming and putting things down on tape and calling out chords and changes and making up faux lyrics on the spot. And some of those jams developed into songs that went into the Deep Water project. And um, but here's what happened. So they were all getting excited about it, and they planned on tracking in July, last July. And I had trigger thumb. I developed from February throughout the whole spring. I had trigger thumb and finger, and I had to really do something about it. I I had a concert that I was scheduled to play in Pittsburgh area, Franklin, PA, and I got a cortisone shot so my thumb would not lock up. And after it wore off, I had to go see a surgeon, and it was kind of frightening for me. It's really humbling
Hmm.
that whenever I put the pressure on the thumb, it would just stay there, and to bend it again would snap. You could hear it snap across the room, and it was super painful.
Wow.
So I went to see a surgeon, and he said, "Yeah, you definitely got." And basically was developed by arthritis in my thumb. And he says, "Well, you came upon this melody honestly throughout your life because you've been playing and pulling that thumb over the fretboard of my guitar. At least I told him that, which I can't do anymore. So all those chord configurations I can't do, but I can. I got back into playing eventually, and here's what happened. They tracked without me, Neal and Byron and Chester, and then I was surprised to hear them say, "We'll send you the files, and you could, just live with them." And I was so honored that they asked me to still be a part of the record, and I took my time, and I took my time through every track and played the best I could, and I actually was surprised at how well I could play the electric, harder on the acoustic, but
Mm.
I really felt quite at home on my trusty old guitar, my Zion and my Strat, and the first solo that I played actually was on. Do you have a title list of titles there in front
Yep,
of you?
I sure do.
There is something about uh, it's the first one of the first vocal things in Deepwater Suite. What's it called? Something Faces or Fires? The Fires?
Yes, yes. Fires of the Sunrise.
Okay, Fire of the Sunrise. Um, I played a little bit of a simple acoustic on that, and I sang a vocal for Neal on that. And then there's this little bit goes and then I go on my electric, and that's the very first thing I played. I thought it was the first solo in Heart of Life, but then that was the second solo that I played, um, where it's just rocking out, and I go, whoa, I did that, and then I went into, learning the whole song and all the movements and all the tricky licks that Neal
Hmm.
comes up with. And Byron came up with a lot of great licks too. Um, but because of how well those guys played together, I said, well, this is something I've got to really grab hold of. And I gave it my very best. And remember doing the second solo in Heart of Life after the Captain Bligh. I thought of God as Captain Bligh. I did not know the reason why. That's how I learned to fly. Then it goes into this ominous section
Hmm.
that just kind of like made me. I was playing like from a guttural place, from deep, deep, deep within, through my instrument, through my amp and my pedals, and getting this tone. It's kind of a Holsworth thing because
Oh
I
yeah.
really like Alan Holsworth a lot, even though I couldn't play technically like him. I could fool some people who aren't as well educated about good guitar playing.
That's I'm glad you brought that name out because that's what I thought of when I heard it.
Yeah, because his emotional slower bits, like on Merry-Go-Round on the Metal Fatigue album, right?
Hmm.
It's a masterpiece of a solo, and he sounds like a soprano sax, but it's a guitar. And I loved, I got a picture of him and I together. He was so kind, Alan Holsworth. He In 1985 he loaned me his Pierce and Hartley Thompson amps when I was doing the Wind in the Wheat album
No
back then.
kidding.
Yeah. So he was always kind to me, and we talk on the phone off and on, and um, uh, but I never played with him. Never, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, there were a couple moments that I thought on Walking in Daylight. I felt like there was a this guitar solo that was vaguely reminiscent. Sounded to me like a maybe a cross between Alan Holdsworth and Adrian Belew. What a mashup of those two might sound like.
hmm Oh yeah, and I'm a fan of both those guitar players, and I mean, I've been a fan of Pat Metheny, Alan Holdsworth, Michael Bloomfield. Whenever I get the Les Paul on, all of a sudden I go more into the Michael Bloomfield. There's a tune I wrote with Mike Picelli, the guitarist Mike Picelli, called "Stay Home Baby," and I recorded it in 2016. Have you ever heard that song?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, you and 99% of the world has never heard. But I was going through a wonderful compressor and right into a Vox AC30 with my Les Paul, and it's that pure, clean tone that Michael Bloomfield used to get. And and I said to Mike, I said, "Oh, Mike Pacelli said to me because he we co-wrote the song, and he says all we need now is um, Al Cooper on organ." I said, well, I happen to have his phone number, but I've never used it. I never called him or bothered him. To this day, I've never called him myself. He said, give it to me, I'll call him. And he called him and he agreed to play organ on that song. And so it's like a Bloomfield Cooper thing, just like Live Adventures from 1968. And it's a swing song, it's like a shuffle. It's a shuffle thing. And a lot of fun to listen to. But that guitar tone, like I said, when I get the Les Paul on, I either play like I did in Glass Harp or I'll play more like Bloomfield. When I play my Zion, I have a tendency to, use that beautiful Kahler tremolo bar and do those sweeping, notes that sweep up like that.
Mm.
Uh, it just makes me play different. And when I get on the Strat, I play differently there too. It's like these different guitars bring something different out in me all the time.
Yeah, you can hear the differences. I was noticing. I think it was the new single, "Time to Fly." I think you had mentioned using your Strat, and it does have a different tone to it, a different sound and feel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think what the thing that is about the Zion, which is a beautiful guitar, it 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 you can split coil, parallel series, and full humbucker with those two pickups. And it can sound like a Strat too. And so if you hear that whammy bar bend, it's most likely it's the white guitar, the Zion.
Mm.
And Ken Hoover is no longer with us. He passed away into glory. But the guy that worked for him at the time, Kenny Marshall, made that guitar for me in 1986. And it's been my go-to guitar for all these years. I mean, it's the one I play on most sessions. Um, but there are times when you definitely just need the Strat or you just definitely need the Les Paul.
Yeah.
I also am a Gretsch fan. I like the Gretsch too. I've got Electromatic, which is a new version of it, but it's got its own tone, that nice tone that, especially when it's going through a good tube amp, I think, you know.
Mhm. So the story goes that Neal was at a Steve Hackett show, ran into Chester. They got to
Oh,
talking about wanting to do something, and they got together, and then they got obviously you and Byron House involved. Why
uh-huh.
was this for you? Why was this the right project? Was it just a chance to work with these musicians or Neal again, or is it something that you preyed on and felt like compelled to do?
Well, I've already played with Chester. He plays on my All at Once album, on songs like All Fearless Love, Not Be Moved, Call the Doctor, uh, a few others. And then I've played with Byron House on an album called Cats and Jammas with Kyle Jones on drums and Byron on bass. And so we've been in the studio together. And of course, I've been in the studio with Neal before.
Mm-hmm.
But I was, when I played on Neal's one project, you know, that was overdubs completely. But with Chester, I was in the studio tracking with Chester, tracking with Byron before this album here. So we're all acquainted with each other, and we all have a lot of respect for each other. And so, uh, like I said, I refer to the Cosmic Cathedral, which is the name of the band, you know. But I think of those three guys as the cathedral, and I'm a little chapel over to the right. So,
There you go. No, tell me about this the making of this record. Obviously it came from jam sessions that you guys had together, but obviously there's a lot involved in making a record and fleshing out songs. Did Neal write all the lyrics? Did you help with that at all?
I did. He wrote most of the lyrics, of course. There's one song on there called Walking in Daylight, which I sing the lead to. When they sent me the files, the drums, the keys, Neal's guitar, bass, um, there was a vocal track that Neal had done where he's just kind of doing like the phonetic thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, not words that have been worked out, but just the sounds, the phonetic sounds that happens with many songwriters just to get a feeling and a flow and a sense of vocal rhythm and nuance and cadence and with all that stuff. So I took his phonetics, how he sang, and I wrote words that sounded just like that, you know. And there were
Interesting.
places where he sang "Walking on Daylight" was originally the title, but then Neal mentioned I got to change that to "Walking in Daylight" because it reminded him of "Walking on Sunshine." Remember
Mm-hmm.
that song,
Yeah.
"Walking on
Yeah.
Sunshine"? So he changed that um and he also brought in background singers, these brilliant youngsters who sang the BGVs for us. And I really loved how the tone is "Time to Fly." I'm singing on the chorus of "Time to Fly" with the BGV singers, and it's it's not the time to something get down. It's the time to fly or something like that. But um, yeah, I helped out on the lyrics. I was really surprised that he used my vocal because I just did it at my house in my studio and say, hey, this is the idea. You could sing it, maybe get John Elefante to sing it, somebody who's got a great prog voice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised they ended up using my vocal on it.
Well, it sounds good. And what I like about it is that you have a nice contrast. So I've always liked bands that have more than one singer, more than the
Me too.
Beatles and so I like that contrast from one to the other within the song and from song to song as well. And you mentioned the background vocals on the harmonies on this album are just so great. I mean, just these soaring big chorus harmonies. Uh,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
just that to me they just go straight into my ear and right into the pleasure center of my brain.
Mine too. Mine too. I mean, I have to admit, I can't listen to the ending of the Deep Water Suite where it's something um door open to heaven, isn't that
Yeah,
what
the
it's
door
called?
to heaven.
Yeah, w without getting choked up. I mean, it is a spiritual experience, and it's emotional, and it's musical, and it's, you know, uh, that last thing where it goes life with all these voices. And when I'd go up to White House where Neal Morse lives in his studio, and where he lives in his studio. That's good.
He pretty
Uh,
much does.
yeah. And if I did a line, a part to the song, a harmony, he'd have me sing it, and not just double my part, but sometimes three times.
Yeah.
And then, and so like there are harmonies throughout the album where you could hear Neil on the very bottom, you can hear him in the middle section in his range.
Hmm.
Then you can hear me above, and then you can hear another above, and then you can hear maybe the girls that are singing BGVs, and all that together. Really well constructed, because he's really good with harmonies, and also just how to articulate those harmonies.
Yeah. Now, when you guys divvied up, I guess, the vocals, the lead vocals, was it just a matter of whose voice fit the notes better?
Well, yeah, he after I did some harmonies, he said, "Hey, would you do this answer thing?" Um, what's that piece on the Deepwater Suite? That's something about New Revelation.
Yes. New Revelation has the call and answer vocals. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're calling and answering. He asked me if I would do that, so I did that at home here, and then harmonize, and it was really easy in terms of like the communication was excellent between us, um, and I was pleased because Neil doesn't always get back to you right away, but his engineer and co-producer Jerry, um, he uh, he kept really close in touch with me, and I would say, hey, what do you think about this, and how's this, and because he was his ear in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And Neil also engineers too, so Neil would do his bits, and then Jerry would look at it and sort it out, and so they would ask me, oh, we're going to extend this section, this we want a longer solo for you here, which was awesome. I love that. That reminded me of the Glass Harp days where we just play and jam and have great time. And also the album is I think it holds a real important message to seekers who are looking for, peace and looking for a relationship with God. Um, but it also, I think, will please prog music lovers, and people that love jamming, the people that love good playing, and like I said, when I heard how well the drums were recorded and how great the bass sounded, and of course Neil's keyboard work especially, I said, well, I definitely want to be up for this. And I played through some pain, especially in the early part of the fall when I started getting my facility back. And but I was quite dedicated to the project, and I'm glad that I was, and I'm glad that it turned out so beautiful.
Yeah, it's terrific. I know you guys are going to do a live performance at Morse Fest this year. Is that
Oh,
is that something you guys have already started doing some rehearsals for?
no, not yet.
Not yet.
We're thinking July. Uh, I mean, because it's um, that kind of thing, like the Glass Harp version of "Can You See Me" from Carnegie Hall. Has that. It's like 25 minutes long or something like that. It's a big piece.
Hmm.
It's just three pieces. Now we've got lines that are really intricate and fast, and lots of sections. I mean, it's going to be a real, for an old guy like me, it's going to be, I could take my time in the studio, but I mean, I worked for days just to be able to play along with the first part of Deep Water Suite where we did the video, and we all did it. Chester had the hardest because he wanted to duplicate exactly his fills and everything, and he's a genius. He did it. Um, um, but Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of work to play one concert, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but I'll give it a try. I'll just do what I can. I would love to have a second guitarist to help cover me on those hard bits because there's more than one guitar. In some
Yeah.
cases, three guitar parts going on at the same time.
Well, at Morse Fest, there's going to be plenty of guitarists around. So
Yeah, they probably
maybe
would
you'll
love to
get
get up
some.
on stage, and I'd say, "Go ahead, go for it. You know it."
Yeah. So this is this you mentioned Deepwater Suite is that's it's a 38-minute song cycle. And
Oh,
it's I'm curious as to and I mean you can't speak for Neal. You mentioned Neal wrote a lot of the lyrics, but did he talk to you about the concept of this launch out into the deeper water?
no, no, I learned about most of that yesterday in the interview he and I did with Douglas Halvering, and uh, but the thing is, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's an honest album. It's lyrically very honest and true, and I really think it's going to relate to a lot of people that are in many different places in their lives, different stages of their life and in their walk and their journey. And so the album is definitely not just, you know, entertainment.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's a spiritual experience and it's a musical uh I mean, I'm as surprised as anybody that I'm a part of this. This is just amazing. Especially, I didn't know if I was ever going to be a part of the album because there are 1,000 guitar players who could play everything that's on this album, especially young players. They're so good today. They're so good. Like Matteo Mancuso. You know him?
Heard the name. I'm not that familiar with him, but yeah.
And once you see him play, you'll never forget him. He's there's nothing he can't play. I mean, he can play anything, and he can sound great too. And then there's all these other guitar players. I think one of the things that encouraged Neal to keep the four of us was that we got along well and respect each other. And we actually prayed before our very first jam session that gave us some of the ideas for the tunes. The four of us actually we traded and we just talked to the Lord and I mean that's a bond. In fact, Chester mentioned when he was in the interview, he came and joined the latter part of the interview yesterday. And he said it always blew his mind, that we always started a session with prayer. And it's like God blessed it. You ask God to bless it, God blessed it. And so yeah, and after we're gone, this album perhaps may live on and on and on and on, So that's what I love about it. When the Beatles quit touring in '66, I remember hearing them talk about, or Paul talking about, we're going to do an album called Sergeant Pepper's, and we're going to put Sergeant Pepper and his Lonely Hearts Club Band. We'll put the album on tour instead of going on tour. So this is the kind of album that could go on tour without us, you know.
You do you have a favorite moment or a favorite track from the album?
Mm. The part that moves me the most is uh, Open Heaven's Door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ending.
Yeah, The Door to Heaven.
Well, it's got that delicate guitar intro to the song, you know. Um, it all comes down. It's really soft. It's very Anthony Phillips. And you know who Anthony Phillips
Oh
is?
yeah. Oh yeah.
He
Genesis
influ
is my favorite band. I don't think I know everything about them, but I know a lot about them.
Yeah, well, Anthony Phillips, he influenced a good part of my Master and Musician album, 1978. I had his Geese and the Ghost, and there was this one piece of what says it? Wait, it goes. Hold on. then he'd go, you know. Sorry, I didn't remember the whole piece,
No, it's
but
okay.
that gives you an idea of how that tune begins with that kind of thing. I asked Neal, I said, "Do you know the Geese and the Ghost album?" He goes, "Oh yeah, you know." But I don't think he was realizing that he was emanating that feeling that I got from the Geese and the Ghost all those years ago. And then it goes into the song. Now, other parts, I on the song that I sing, "Walking in Daylight," it breaks into this kind of this shuffle thing, breakdown where it's just drums and bass.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good grooves on this album. A lot of jazzy
Yeah,
grooves.
that's Chester and Byron. And of course, Neal does some great Rhodes-ish jazzy piano bits too.
Yeah.
But then it goes into, I do this long ebow solo, and then it breaks into this thing. And just when you think, did I have enough? No, it keeps going. And so, man, it was a delightful thing
Oh yeah,
to
that's
listen
an
to such
Ebo. I
long
was
solos
wondering what that
again,
was. That's an
because
Ebo.
we're not trying to make an album for AM radio or uh, it's not K Love won't touch any of this, I don't think, but um, and they're nice guys, but it's definitely not what's going on in CCM. It's beyond that,
Yeah.
it's vintage stuff. And I just love Heart of Life, the whole entire opening track, that to me that is so great. And then on Time to Fly, you've got this incredible sax solo, and we kind of interplay the two of us, which was a mixing thing that Jerry did. Um, I love the chorus of that. I love the groove. Yeah, I think this is different from the other Neal Morse albums I've heard, and I think a lot has to do with the players, it's
Yeah.
just a different, it's a different cuisine.
Yes. It's very different. And in fact, that I'm glad you brought up that the Heart of Life, because to me it's got a little bit of Steely Dan in there. It's got a little bit of even like in the chorus with the horns, it sounds a little bit like something Chicago would do.
No, you're talking about Time to Fly?
Sorry, yes, Time to Fly. Yes,
Yeah,
sounds like
Time to
something
Fly.
Chicago would do. And yeah.
I thought of that. I thought Steely Dan. I thought Chicago. Uh, and the thing is, because we're not just kids. We've grown up with all this music, so it's inside of us.
Hmm.
It's embedded into our musical DNA, and so yeah, it's great. Um, I really I'm really curious to see because I'm hearing from people I haven't heard from in so long saying I'm really excited about hearing this project when it comes out. People I haven't heard from in years that were Glass Harp fans, that were prog fans, I
Hmm.
I, I hope Kerry Livgren gets a chance to hear it because I have great respect for Kerry Livgren and
Yeah.
um, I think he would like it too.
I'm sure he would. This is a very different. It's not your standard Neal Morse. Some of the messaging is similar to stuff he's done in the past, but the themes and topics, but the music is certainly different, and that owes to the different players on this album. I was not aware of Byron House before this album, but I'm so glad to be aware of him now because his bass playing is fantastic on this. He did his contributions to me are very um, prominent, and I think that it would sound completely different with a different bassist. So I'm glad that he was on this. Um, when someone listens to this album all the way through, what do you hope they kind of take away from that experience of listening?
That they just had a really good full musical meal that won't give them any indigestion, that will only not just feed their soul, but feed their spirit, feed them and give them a sense of satisfaction in listening to it. It's kind of like when we were younger and we heard an album that just kind of blew us away for the first time when we heard it. Um, it was a landmark moment for us. We could think of many albums and experiences. I can, the Rolodex or whatever you call that thing. The film is going, and um, I have a feeling that this is gonna turn a lot of heads, I have a feeling it will. But the thing is, in terms of performing it live, I'm scared stiff of it. I am.
I'm sure you guys will knock it out of the park, but and you'll be in front of a very receptive and sympathetic audience at Morse Fest, so I'm sure it'll go well. But Cosmic Cathedral's first album, Deep Water, drops April 25th on Inside Out Music. You can get it at nealmorse.com, his Radiant Record shop. You can get it at the Inside Out Music store. It's available on CD, a beautiful blue vinyl. And you can get it probably digitally at all the normal stops. Phil, where can people find you online? Is your Facebook page the best place for people to get information about you?
I don't know because I don't go there myself. I
Okay,
don't do any social media. And so if you're getting a message from me through Instagram or Facebook, it's not me.
it's not
Uh,
you.
Not me. Uh, I heard there's an imposter out there, but what a drag. But my Bandcamp is where I think most of the activity
Okay,
is. My website's not even that good either. It's pretty bad. It's very outdated and not up to date at
okay,
all. But my Bandcamp, thanks to Tom Galata, who also works for Reelin' in the Ears Inc. Um, he is he's enabled my music to be put up on Bandcamp, so you can listen to it, you can stream it, you can purchase it, and there's a whole Glass Harp section too, which is lovely. And then there's a Phil and Friends section. I just put out an album with Tommy Coombs. Remember the group Love Song?
love song.
Yeah, Chuck Gerard, Tommy Coombs. Well, Tommy's two sons, Eric and Tyler Coombs, we did a jam album called Up All Night, and that's a lot of fun. That's up there. And I've also got three, almost a fourth studio album with Music Tellers, which is an improvisational group with cello, percussion, woodwinds, and bass. Well, Byron's on the newest album, Music Tellers 4. Tony Gerber, Kyle Jones, Shannon Hayden, and myself. And I've done an album with Tony Levin and Jerry Marotta called The Bucket List.
Oh wow, that's a bucket list to listen to the three of you together because that's those are some heavy hitters there.
Yeah, and they were based out of jams, just like what we did with Neal. But it's an instrumental album, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And I did some dates with those guys too, and that was a lot of fun. Amazing to play with people like Jerry Marotta, Tony Levin, Chester Thompson, Byron House, and Neal Morse, and and the friends and music tellers. Um, I love collaborating. I've also done 5 albums with my good friend Jeff Johnson. They are among my favorite projects too.
Oh, good.
So I'm not just the solo guy that just picks around on an acoustic, but I love joining others and creating with others very much so.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for creating this music with Chester and Byron and Neal. I'm enjoying it. I'm sure Neal's fans are going to love it. Progressive rock fans are going to love it. People that are a little more adventurous, uh, seeking a little more adventure in their Christian music, they're going to love it. Messaging is all very positive, and I hope this does really well for you guys. And thank you so much for your time and telling me about
Michael, enjoyed talking to you so much. Hey, I'd like to say hi to my friends at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas.
it.
See that?
Yeah, nice shirt.
Oh, I wear this shirt all the time. It's and they are just I've played there. Actually, I did a live concert with music tellers, and it's on my Bandcamp site live at the Guitar Sanctuary. And want to say hi to Brian there if he happens to see this, and all the other guys there. Um, I want to just kudos and hello to so many friends and family out there. Thanks again, Neil Williams, for your support as well.